autism. You've all joined us this evening for our autism webinar. So this is going to cover theory and practice of autism. We're going to look at diagnostic criteria. We're going to look at what you are looking for in terms of the potential presence of autism. We're going to look at useful terminology, and we're going to look at actually how to support children who either have diagnoses or who you suspect have diagnoses of autism. Quickly, the Zoom housekeeping rules, cameras on or off, I really don't mind. It's the evening time, so if you want to take them off, no judgment here. Please keep yourselves on mute at all times, though. At the end, I will throw open the virtual floor, and you can call out any questions or you can type them in the chat box. If you have questions as you go, and you think, oh, I won't remember that by the end, please type them into the chat box as we go, and I will review them all at the end. Do come and go as you need to. Certainly, I've got children at home. You may have children at home, pets, all sorts, the Amazon man, I don't know. So do come and go as you need. Slides will be emailed to you when you have completed your feedback form, which has your email address on it. Damon will send you the slides. So these webinars, as you probably know by now, are hosted by our Reach Out Early Years Stronger Practice Hub team, and that comprises of the lovely Damon, Victoria, Jess and Lisa. We have got Damon and Lisa on with us tonight, so thank you to them for being with us. So Stronger Practice Hubs were originally part of the Department for Education COVID-19 recovery catch-up scheme, but they were so well received that now they have kind of evolved into regional hubs, which are supporting the development of children across the early years foundation stage and really trying to close that gap between the advantaged and disadvantaged children that we look after. There are 18 Stronger Practice Hubs across the UK, and our lovely Stronger Practice Hub is based at Greenstead Green in Essex. One thing that you can all go and look at all of the time is the Early Years Evidence Store, which is a web-based resource which has all of the current evidence for projects, research, all sorts of things around the early years foundation stage. So if you are a new practitioner gaining your knowledge for the first time, fantastic. If you have been a practitioner for a long time, I think whatever career you're in, you can very much get into that habit of doing it this way because it's the way I've always done it. Certainly, as a long-term speech and language therapist, I know that that is a trap we can all fall into, whatever career we're in. So it's always good to go and double check that what you're doing is backed by current evidence. Go and have a look on socials. There are some QR codes coming up on the next slide here. See what's on offer. There are webinars on reading, webinars on sustainability, Ofsted frameworks, all sorts of, there's a new SEND network and a baby network coming. Please do go and see what is on offer from the hub. It's all fully funded and free to you. But if there's something that you think, oh, I just need something on, something else particular, do get in touch with them and they will be able to put together a package of bespoke support for you. Okay, so thinking about autism then. So just in terms of me, what qualifies me to talk about autism? So I have one daughter who is diagnosed autistic and ADHD, so ADHD, and I have one daughter who is diagnosed ADHD and probably autistic, but we are waiting on that diagnosis. I also work part-time for the Cambridge ADHD and Autism Centre. We are a group of specialists providing private ADHD and autism diagnosis, and I'm an ADOS trained clinician, which means that I do administer the kind of gold standard autism assessment, and I'm part of that team making these really life-changing decisions for children and adults. So I'm pretty well placed to talk about it because I work it and I live it. Okay. So starting from the beginning, what does all ASD stand for? So it stands for Autism Spectrum Disorder. Okay, but we're going to talk a little bit more about that terminology in a bit. So autism falls under the umbrella of neurodiversity, and neurodiversity is essentially, the spread of different brain types. Okay, so neurotypical people are people who share a brain type with the majority of brains. And then neurodivergent people are those people whose brain differs from that neurotypical profile. And that can be for a range of reasons. I think we generally tend to think autism and ADHD. They tend to be our two go-tos when we think about neurodiversity. But it also includes dyslexia, developmental language disorder, tic disorders, dyscalculia, developmental coordination disorder. So there are lots and lots of different conditions that fall under the umbrella of neurodiversity. And actually, this is a really good week to be doing this webinar because it is Neurodiversity Celebration Week. So that's something just a little bit on the side. So the definition of autism then is it's a neurological and developmental disorder that affects how people interact with others, communicate, learn, and behave. And although it can be diagnosed at any age, it's described as a developmental disorder because symptoms generally appear in the first 2 years of life. So they appear, but we may not always notice them for what they are until a later point. But if you look back, you can sometimes go, ah, which is what has happened to me with my recent diagnosis of my now 10-year-old. I've gone back and looked at some of her baby videos and gone, oh, that was autism all along. Okay. And that's what can happen. So a note on naming conventions. So we're moving now towards a more neurodiversity or neuroaffirming approach. And the use of the word disorder is being challenged. Okay. We know that different types of brains should be celebrated. And we're not trying to fix brains now. We're not trying to change them. They shouldn't really be classed as disordered. So there's a move away from ASD to ASC, which is autism spectrum conditions, which I think is a much kinder, you know, term. I think the connotations of that are far more positive than autism spectrum disorder. So you will probably hear me and, your more neuroaffirming professionals use the term ASC. It means exactly the same as autism or ASD, but we're just trying to move towards that new terminology. So the prevalence then. So the prevalence of autism, it's estimated that 1 in every 100 children in the UK has autism. Okay, and that sometimes surprises people. And 4 times as many boys are being diagnosed than girls. Okay, that is largely because girls are super at masking. Okay, they are amazing maskers. My two are cracking maskers at school. Okay. So although the diagnosis rates have increased, lots of children are still not being detected. And a study led by Simon Baron Cohen, yes, it's the brother of Sacha Baron Cohen, Ali G, for those of you who are old enough to remember Ali G, like me. So he looked at some children in Cambridge and found that for every 3 children who had been diagnosed with autism, there were 2 more who hadn't. And that would mean that there's an additional 300,000 in the UK who haven't been identified yet. So actually, there's a lot of children where, there is probably a diagnosis to be made, but hasn't yet been made. So who diagnoses ASD, ASC? A specialist team should include, and my team does, a paediatrician and or a child and adolescent psychiatrist, speech and language therapist, a psychologist. We should also have regular access to paediatricians or paediatric neurologists. My team also has a dyslexia screener and teacher. It has specialist GPs. We also have occupational therapists. So, I tend to think the bigger the team, the better, really. The more pairs of eyes on an individual, the better, and the more robust the assessment. So I'm going to use some slides from Mrs. Speechy P. If you don't follow Mrs. Speechy P, you must follow Mrs. Speechy P on Instagram and Facebook. She is a speech and language pathologist who has recently been diagnosed with ADHD and autism. She is American and she is amazing. She's given me permission to use her slides in my webinars. So autism is a neurodevelopmental condition that is comprised of patterns of differences in 3 key areas: language and communication, socialization, and interest, routine, and sensory processing. I'm going to have a little deep dive into that now. The first thing to realize is that the autism spectrum isn't linear. So we used to think that children were either very autistic or not very autistic. So you might hear the terms mildly autistic or profoundly autistic or high level or low level. We're trying not to use them anymore. Actually, the autism spectrum isn't linear like that. It's more this kind of spiky circular profile that you can see here, where children have a lot of different profile. They might have they might be really, really good at transitioning between activities, but have real difficulty like with emotional regulation. They might actually be pretty social kids, but they might have social differences in in other ways, or they might have sensory sensitivities. They can have different strengths and patterns within these kind of domains, and so it's becoming less now a linear kind of perspective and more looking at a child in a more rounded way. So when we're looking at the diagnostic criteria are in this horrendously long, dry manual called the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. And the diagnostic criteria are really, really stringent, and we really, really adhere to them. So I think there's this narrative now that a lot of people are just sort of going, oh yeah, they look autistic, we'll just rubber stamp it. Actually, your good quality clinicians will be looking at these and making sure that all of the boxes are ticked before making a diagnosis. So let's have a look then at the criteria. So the criteria A. So we are looking at persistent differences. And note that actually in the DSM-5 it says deficits. But again, looking neuroaffirmingly, are they deficits or are they differences? So these lovely people at Neurodivergent Insights have changed all of the kind of deficit-based language into slightly more neuroaffirming language, which is why I picked these slides. So we're looking at persistent differences in social communication and social interaction across multiple contexts. Okay, so they have to tick all three of these to be present. All three subcategories must be present for a diagnosis. So you're looking at differences in social emotional reciprocity, differences in non-verbal communication, and differences in understanding and maintaining relationships. So, for example, that differences in social emotional reciprocity. So again, thinking about it, I might say in an assessment to a child, "Oh yeah, I went to the seaside at the weekend," and you would expect someone to go, "Oh yeah, where'd you go?" But a lot of autistic children will just go, "Nothing." They don't always pick up on that, and they don't always know that there should be an answer there. So that can be one of the differences in that kind of reciprocal communication. Again, I might say to them, what makes a good friend? And they might say, oh, well, just how much time you spend with them. There's nothing sort of deeper than that, okay, for our slightly older children. We have different ways of diagnosing the littlies. So again, you might also see like a monotone voice. Again, one of those things that I noticed when I went back over my daughter's videos was she had a very, very monotone voice. Difficulty initiating conversation unless it's a special interest. So our autistic children, they have a special interest. It could be dinosaurs, it could be helicopters, it could be sea turtles, it could be anything. And we deep dive and we'll talk about them till the cows come home. Anything else? No, very difficult. Difficulty with small talk. Why bother? Why do we make it? What is it for? Well, good question. And difficulties with that back and forward conversation. Criteria 2, again, not really understanding that non-verbal communication. So for our info dumpers, the ones who talk and talk and talk and talk and talk about their favorite things, you might be looking completely bored and like, what, checking your phone. They won't notice that and they will carry on and on and on regardless. There might be limited facial expression. Our vocal volume might be too high, too low, too high pitched. High pitched voice can sometimes be an indicator of autism also. A3, again, difficulty making and maintaining friendships with allistic friends. So allistic means not neurodivergent. Okay, so again, you tend to find the autistic kiddos, the neurodivergent kiddos, they all come together. Okay, and they find their tribe, and it's one of the most beautiful things you'll see. But with those allistic autistic friendships, they're slightly harder. Okay, Difficulty with shared imaginative play because very often an autistic child has a plan of exactly how this is going to pan out. They may not actually tell any of the people that they're playing with. So then when it all goes wrong, it's very difficult to deal with. And difficulty with shifting context as well. Criteria B then. So we've looked at social. We're now looking at that kind of restrictive, repetitive patterns of behavior or interests or activities. So we might have stereotyped or repetitive motor movements, otherwise known as stimming. So stimming or echolalia. So stimming is that spinning or flapping. It can be micro stimming. It can be something very much like this or like this. So when I'm assessing a child or an adult even for autism and carrying out the assessment, I film it because actually when I go back and watch the video, I might see hands moving like this under the table that I wouldn't have seen otherwise. You can spot these little micro movements. And they function to self-soothe. Children line up objects or toys. I mean, I haven't got a diagnosis, but all my books and games are in rainbow order. So, could be some writing on the wall there. Insistence on sameness, inflexible adherence to routines. So these are your kids who find transitions really difficult, okay? And again, I revert back to my children a lot because it just makes sense. With her at nursery, if she got upset, she didn't want to cuddle, she wanted to know the plan. And as soon as nursery said, right, we're going to go in the garden, then have a snack, then read a book, then this, everything was fine. Hug, no, thank you. Plan, yes. Okay. So it can be these little micro things where you're like, aha. Highly restricted, fixated interests. So again, you've got these children who at the age of 3 can tell you every single dinosaur, the full name, and whether they're an omnivore, a herbivore, or a carnivore. You've got the children that can tell you in detail how a helicopter works, all of those things. Hyper or hypo reactivity to sensory input. So again, nap time, stroking my back, no thank you, please get off me. That was another key one that we noted. Sensitivity to food. These are your children who have safe foods and very not safe foods. The kids who either love messy play and want to get right in there, or the kids who are like, no, thank you, I don't want to go anywhere near it. Okay, so you know the kinds of things, probably you've seen them in your practice before. We also have criteria C, D, and E. So traits must be present in the early developmental period. And this is what I always say to my lovely early years practitioners. You may not see the diagnosis, but the evidence that you are collating now and gently feeding into your reports is going to be absolutely key. Okay, so I'm very, very lucky and I still work with my daughter's key worker from nursery. I think she might be on this call tonight. I'm not sure. But I was very lucky and I was able to say, going for an autism assessment, what do you remember? And she went, well, I remember. And obviously, I'm really lucky to have that relationship. But if we'd have gone back in the learning logs, I suspect it would all have been there in between the lines, ready for me to pick out at a later date. So you're good. And that, as a clinician, is really important. I am looking at pervasive, I'm looking across multiple environments for a long time. Okay. Criteria D, it must cause significant impairment in social, occupational, or other areas of functioning. So, is this going to be, or is it already a barrier to something? Criteria E, these disturbances are not better explained by something else. Okay, so I have to know, I have to be sure that this is not part of something else that's going on. And that's where your multidisciplinary team can come in handy. Okay, so I'm about to start assessing a child who's got selective mutism. And so I've been asked to lead on that case because who's the best person to tease apart whether it's autism or selective mutism? Well, the speech and language therapist, but I also need my team with me doing all the other bits. So that's where several pairs of eyes can help when you're trying to tease apart other things. Okay, so they're the diagnostic criteria. So I hope you can see that actually a diagnosis of autism is not taken lightly, or it shouldn't be. There are a lot of boxes that have to be ticked for us to make a good diagnosis. I'm going to leave this one for later for you guys to read. It basically puts that in a lot of sort of easier to read ways. Okay. I've repeated a slide because clearly I was in a hurry when I put this all together. So the myths then, the myths are it's always easy to identify autism. In some children, absolutely, yes, it is. In some children, it's a lot more subtle. Autistic people never make eye contact. No, some of them make beautiful eye contact, but then you see those little barriers come up in other domains. Autistic people don't have empathy. Oh, such a lie. They do have empathy. They can have the most beautiful empathy. So, my eldest, who again we think is most likely autistic, she was having a vaccination the other day at a kind of drop-in place. There was someone else having an absolute mare. And she had a vaccination and she got out and she said to me, she's nearly 13. She went, bleeping hell, mum, that really hurt. But I couldn't say anything because that kid over there did not need to see me having that reaction. And I was like, okay, so, there is empathy with these children. It just might not come out in the way that you're expecting. All autistic kids do X, Y, Z. They don't. They're all different. There's a very famous quote: "If you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person." Okay, because they are all different. All autistic people are antisocial? No, not at all. They just find their tribe. Autism only impacts boys? No, but again, boys tend to present more obviously because they're not masking. Autistic kids don't make progress. They absolutely do. So these are the myths that a lot of people still carry. How autism is portrayed by the media and how it can actually look. I just think this is a really nice, powerful, neuro-affirming slide. I just like to put it in there just to have a think about. So this is really important. Our goal is to support kids as they are, not change them to be less autistic. Okay. So I've been a speech and language therapist now for 21 years. And if I look back on my early days, where I was sitting with children going, look at me, with my post box and my letter. You can't have a letter until you look at me. Look at me, look at me, look at, oh my goodness. But you do what you do with your evidence at the time, and that links back to the early years evidence store. Just because it was right 20 years ago doesn't mean it's still right now. And, when I think back about it, my heart bleeds a little bit, but we're not trying to change them now. Okay. So that was the theory. That was the kind of diagnostics and what you're looking out for. How do you support children in your setting who might have or do have autism? And I always say, do not wait for the label. If you think your child is autistic or the child is autistic, do the strategies. You're not going to do any harm. You're probably going to do a great thing. So the basics, the key things, if you take nothing else from tonight, don't approach autism as a deficit or a negative. It is not. Engage with the child's family or caregivers if they are ready. They might not be ready. And if they're not ready, you are gently collecting the evidence, knowing that it will probably come into play at a later date. Use simple language with the child. Avoid non-literal language, such as, pull your socks up or it's raining cats and dogs, okay? They are very tricky for autistic children. Keep routines consistent where you can, although it doesn't always happen. Give plenty of warning when you can't. So World Book Day, dressing up days, going for a trip to the library days, don't stop them. Just make sure that we're giving plenty of warning and plenty of prep work where necessary. Get to know the child. What are their triggers? What are their strengths? How are they going to communicate dysregulation to you? Or how are they going to communicate rising dysregulation? We don't want to wait until the meltdown is here. What are your little clues that it's bubbling up? How can you note them? Again, talk to the parents. They might go, oh, well, if we start hair twizzling, you need to change something. They can often provide some really good insight into how to know when you're heading towards something. Getting to know the child. Why is this important? There's another, as well as Mrs. Speechy P, try and follow the account NeuroWild. So that's a lady called Emma, who is another neurodivergent speech and language therapist. It appears there's quite a lot of us. Um, and she's a beautiful illustrator as well. And this is a piece of her work. So each plant is different. What works for this plant doesn't work for this plant. If you assume you have one of these, when you actually have one of these, you might accidentally be harming it. The more you know about your little plant, the better you can help them thrive. And I just think that is just the most simple and wonderful little analogy about getting to know your plants and your little children, because actually we don't just want them to cope, do we? We want them to thrive. Okay. So let's try and think about a few practical things that you can do in the environment to help your autistic or likely autistic or ADHD kiddos. Because remember, there's a lot of overlap between autism and ADHD. A lot of ADHD kiddos have sensory needs and social communication needs that kind of mirror, and there's kind of a 50% overlap. So most children, 50% of children get a dual diagnosis. So, you've got to be aware of both of them as well. So, autistic children might be overwhelmed by a chaotic entry or exit point, bright lighting, strong smells, loud or unexpected noises, certain foods, or too much input at once. So, got this. Well, I was very impressed with myself ages ago when I did this first. I got this made on ChatGPT, which is why the numbers go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10. So, not me, ChatGPT. But thinking about a child coming in the morning, there might be a lot of background chatter, there might be busy displays and lots of visual overwhelm. Again, children with autism, they don't know, do I look at the eyes? Do I look at the nose? Do I look at the mouth? Do I look at the facial expression? There's spoken language coming in. Even just one conversation with one person and just looking at one face, there's an awful lot of information there. There's going to be people coming and going. The floor might be noisy and hard. All sorts of things going on. Plus, I don't know, it can be the most simple things like you've changed your perfume, or maybe you've put a plug in your home or something, and just one change in sensory input can cause real distress to some children. So it's really worth just thinking about every little thing that you do. It can also be brightly lit there as well. So how can we help? We can create a quiet area. Now, I know childcare settings are noisy. I know you can't give them a silent room, but you can try and reduce that sensory stimulation by maybe like a sensory tent, a weighted blanket, ear defenders. So again, my 10-year-old, she just has ear defenders in her rucksack at school and whizzes off to get them whenever she needs them. Sensory tools and fidgets, okay? Even just reducing some of that busyness can make a massive, massive difference to a child. Visuals are very important to autistic children because they find comfort in knowing what's happening during the day, and they find changes to the routine or the environment really difficult. We know that if children feel safe and secure, they're more likely to learn. Okay. So visual supports may be a visual schedule, so a visual timetable, visual timers. So again, how many times do we say 5 more minutes, then we're going to X, Y, Z? I mean, I don't know many typical children who could actually quantify what 5 more minutes actually is. Yeah. How many children actually know what a minute is, or how long a minute or 5 minutes is? So a visual timer can be really or really important, not just for the autistic children, but for children. Okay. Choice boards, first and then boards, transition cards. One that often gets overlooked is actually emotions, because I think we think autistic children can't, you know, name their emotions, and therefore we don't even put anything up so that they can try. So actually, it's really important that we do put these up and we use them and we're modeling them. So even if it could be you, it could be like, oh, I'm feeling really angry because somebody threw that toy, or I'm feeling really happy because you just did that lovely bit of work or something. We can be using and modeling it. Just because children with autism find emotions hard doesn't mean we should shy away from them. So 9 reasons to use visuals then. So firstly, they can be referred back to, okay? And it remains constant long after the word has been said. So we go to the doctors, don't we? And how many times you get out the doctors and go, oh God, I wish I'd written that down. Okay. It's just another visual. Writing something down is just another visual, okay, that we rely on. It allows for slow processing. So often autistic children are slower to process things because they're working through all of the stuff that's coming in. It can help prepare for transition. It supports all students. Visuals are great for everybody. They promote independence because children know what to do next. They're transferable between home and school. They show what's expected and they reduce anxiety. There's no real reason not to use visuals, to be honest. They're so brilliant. So, other considerations with visuals, always use spoken language alongside them. They're an aid to understanding spoken language, they're not a substitute. So, again, when I start to use AAC with parents and children, so that is kind of sort of pictures or symbols or signing or your kind of electronic devices, I always say you have to speak with them because it can springboard children into talking. Okay, so you always use spoken language alongside them. Use a variety of visuals. Don't just stick to one. I've seen many people just go, yeah, well, I've done a visual timetable, but it's just not helping. It's like, yeah, but what else are you using? So we all have different ways of learning things, don't we? We all have different things that resonate with us, and we all learn better in different ways. So don't just stick with one thing. Use lots of things. Keep them accessible. So again, if I'm using PECS with a child or a similar kind of system, a picture exchange or a communication board, sometimes they're stuck in the kid's bag on their coat hook or something. So some of these sort of methods act as a child's voice. So it's a bit dramatic, but you wouldn't put a bit of masking tape over a child who speaks mouth to take their voice away. So why would you hide it in their school bag, away from them? So you've got to make sure that everything you have is actually accessible to the child so that they can use it. So if they use a communication book, have it in the same place every day that's in reach so that they can go and get it and use it, because you'll be surprised they will very often just go and get it and use it. Give the child the time to process. Okay, and that's really key for children with all speech, language, and communication needs. Persevere. They can take time to embed. They can take a lot of time to embed. So don't give up. Just keep it there on the regular. Okay. I see people sort of give it a week and go, nah, that didn't work. It can take like several months. So do please persevere. And visuals, remember, they last long after the word has disappeared. They help everybody. I mean, they help us, don't they? I mean, we'll look back and go, what did I just say? No. Okay, we do that. Okay. Um, so yeah, we all use visuals. A shopping list is a visual, a diary and a calendar, they're visuals. They don't have to be, you know, really, really sort of sophisticated. So again, Mrs. Speechy P put this up as an example of one that she used with her son. She was like, oh, I haven't got the stuff that I need to tell him what's happening today. So she just quickly typed out on her phone and used a few emojis. Great. So visuals can really be everywhere you go. There is no excuse not to use emojis because we've all got something like this on our phone that we could use. So we know not everything can be the same. We know that routines change and that lots of other changes happen in the early years setting, and that can cause anxiety. So things like dress up days, substitute staff, school holidays. So I don't know about the childminders in here, but sometimes during the holidays, older siblings will come, as kind of childcare, or maybe familiar children have gone on holiday. So there's a different mix, transition to other settings, removal of outdoor play. If it's too rainy and you can't go outside where you would normally go outside, and that's quite a little one. And in our weather, that probably happens quite a lot. Trips, birthday parties, visitors, loads of change can happen. But there are also smaller changes that sometimes I don't think we think about. So, there can be environmental changes. Like even if you just like have a picture in your lounge, if you're a child and you change the picture, that can really throw an autistic child. If you rearrange the furniture, um, like I say, a new child starting or a familiar child being, away, maybe you've changed your doorbell from a normal ding dong to a ring doorbell and it sounds different. Maybe, you've got new glasses or you've dyed your hair. It can be little things like that that for an autistic child, they can be like, whoa, that's different. That's really different. And that can really throw them. So if you have a child and you are thinking, what is wrong today? What is different? Why are they off? Really, really look around your setting and go, Is there something tiny that has changed? Like I say, it could even be that you're wearing a different perfume or that you are wearing perfume and you don't usually. Anything like that, a familiar adult smell, or even how their hair feels. I don't know. Lots and lots of different things. A note on stimming. So stimming, it helps neurodivergent individuals stay regulated. We must not stop it. We do not say quiet hands anymore. Quiet hands is not a thing anymore. Okay. Generally, most of us stim. Okay. So we might click a pen, we might twizzle our hair. I'm a bit of a hair chewer. But if I get really excited, I'm a bit excited. You know, we've all seen Wallace and Gromit where he does that when there's loads of cheese. You know, we all do it a bit, but I think we know when it's a kind of autistic or neurodivergent stim, but we're not stopping it anymore. Stimming can be tactile, so again, rubbing things, chewing things, grinding our teeth, repeating preferred sounds. So have you got the child that gets that electronic toy and presses the same button over and over and over and over again? That's auditory stimming. They just like the sound that's coming in, it's regulating. Do they hold things right up to their eyes? That's visual stimming. Or go like that right in front of their eyes, or look right out the side of their eyes. It can be smelling things. It can be that vestibular jumping, rocking, spinning, pacing. That's one I think we tend to know a bit more about. It can be that seeking pressure. Do they love those big hugs? Do they love being bundled? Do they love weighted blankets? Or it can be a combination of all of those things. It can be humming. It can be things like going ticka, 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 ticka. All of those, okay? All of these can be a kind of a stim. So again, looking back on my daughter, it's quite a funny one. It's a bit cheeky. So if you don't like cheeky, I apologize in advance. But when she was little, she used to do this a lot. And we used to think that was hilariously funny. So I took lots of videos of it because it's a bit cheeky. But what we noticed when we were looking back on her videos is that actually she has trouble with food and food textures and food tastes. And this movement always happened in the high chair when it was food time. So it wasn't just her making a funny thing, a funny hand signal. Look again through a different lens, it was a stim. So, you know, you can get these moments of going, oh, wow. Okay. So again, look back. So noting down all of those things as an early years practitioner can be really useful when they're 10 and you're going through that. Another visual on what stimming can look like. Okay, so again, this will come out in your slides when Damon sends them. You can have a look at them again. Okay, we are not stopping kids from stimming, even if we think it looks unusual and we think, what will other people think when they see this? We should educate instead of stopping the child. This is what helps them be able to focus. This is how they show they're excited. This helps her to regulate. There is no shame in stimming. But when we act like it's bad, kids feel that they're bad for doing it. Okay, and we don't really want that. Okay, so we're trying to move towards educating rather than quietening it down. Autistic play. Okay, and as I say, this is a whistle stop, and I'm sorry for that, but there's so much to pack in, and I hope you can digest it again later. So autistic play may be sensory based. So it may be that movement based, sort of tied in with that stimming. They might be searching, running and jumping and spinning. Have you seen the children who get right down on the floor and they're rolling the car right in front? So that's that kind of eye level visual sensitivity that they're, visual sensory input that they're looking. They're the spinners. They spin wheels and they watch them spin. They might be, again, like I've said, seeking those sounds and playing them over and over. They might love water play or squishy toys or slime or Play-Doh, or they might absolutely hate it. It's one or the other. And they might explore sensory aspects of toys. They might mouth things a lot later than you would expect or smell them. They might prefer to play alone a lot of the time, or only with familiar people, or only with, specific games and toys. They prefer parallel play, and they often need to have a familiar adult. Okay. They will often imitate play that they have seen perhaps in the home or even therapists. So My daughter used to get the language assessment out and ask to do that. So I would just administer the Teddy Talk test to her 8,000 times a day at her request because it was a safe thing to do. She knew what was coming, and we'd sometimes swap roles, but it would essentially be all based around that. They might imitate scenarios from YouTube. So a lot of it can be copied. Having a strong plan. Now, this is one that, you know, a lot of people go, oh, yeah, but it's really important to know. Lots of autistic children will absolutely have a plan or idea about how this play is going to happen. They will know how they are going to set up the doll's house or the happy land or whatever they're using, or the Playmobil. They will absolutely know how that story is going to go. They are not going to tell anybody. And then when another child or adult comes along and does something that isn't part of that plan, despite the fact that they don't know what the plan is, the autistic child will probably become very, very upset. Okay, because they had a plan and something has deviated from the plan. Okay, and this makes playing with other children really, really tricky. And this is why autistic children very often play with adults, because we're a lot easier to kind of control. Whereas smaller children against smaller children, you know, they don't really care, do they? They're going to go with what they want to do. Whereas an adult is a little bit easier to kind of sway to do what I wanted you to do. They might play with non-traditional toys or play with toys in non-traditional ways. So, you know, these are our light switch kiddos playing with like spoons, paper, sticks, rocks. They might carry something in their hand wherever they go. Dump and run. Okay, so it's, oh, look, a box of blocks, dump. Oh, look, a box of toys, dump. And then dump, 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 dump. And it looks like some kind of bomb's gone off in your setting. Um, they sometimes enjoy setting up the pretend play scene. They set the doll's house up beautifully and then they leave it because the setting up was the fun bit. The setting up was the good bit. They don't want to play, they just want to set it up. Or again, it's that organizing, lining things up, putting things in order. It's still play. It's still play. So it used to be that we would go, oh, you don't want to play like that. You want to play like this. Oh, look, you've lined up these toys. No, 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 no. Here's a garage. Let's make them go down here. We don't do that anymore. We just go, oh, wow, that's an amazing line. That line is so long. It's so colourful. Look at all the cars in it. We don't try and go, oh, you don't want to play like that. You want to play like this. Those days are gone. The play may be considered immature for their age. They may do the same thing over and over and over and over again. They may play with toys that are sort of meant for younger children. So again, I've just said it. Instead of trying to stop or change this kind of play, imitate it. Show them that you can enjoy the things they like too. Don't try and change it. Just imitate, copy. Okay, it's really validating for these children. So, well done for making it this far. Take home messages. Don't be scared. Okay, consideration is key. Look at all the situations and just step back and think, what might feel strange to my little person? Again, remember the devil's in the detail with these kiddos. Get to know your child's communication behaviours. Can you see when they're becoming dysregulated? If so, what are the most effective ways to help? Communicate with the family. Don't stop stimming. Stimming is good. And all play is valid, even if it doesn't look typical. Further reading, you can go onto the National Autistic Society. They've got a whole section on professional practice. So this is a good one. They've got things like toileting and autistic children, things about emotions, top 5 tips supporting preschool children. Well worth a good look. Blossom, which I know some of you will probably use as your kind of reporting to people platform. They have a whole section on making your nursery autism friendly. And then this ASD Info Wales, bizarrely, it's an absolutely cracking PDF. So please do go and search that out. This will all be in your slides, so don't feel like you have to like desperately write it all down. You will get all these slides in your slides, and you can see I've left the link in the top there. It's a bit wordy, but gives you a starting point. Okay, coming up next in April, Gestalt language processing. So these are our echolalic children. There are 6 stages of Gestalt language processing, and I have been asked, I've done a whistle stop tour, which you can find on YouTube. I've done a quick half hour on what is Gestalt language processing, our echolalic children, the ones who script, the ones who you can't understand, but you know they're saying something. There are 6 stages, and the hub My lovely people at the Hub have asked me to deep dive across 4 webinars into stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and then stage 4 to 6. Okay. And these are going to be over the next 4 months. So we're going to start with stage 1 in April and then carry on through to April, May, June, July. Okay. And then the replay will be Tuesday, the 28th of April. I do not know what that's going to be yet because my feet haven't touched the ground in about the last 3 weeks. We will decide a title and we will put it up and it will be out on a newsletter soon, but it will be, so I might think about, I might do ADHD, to be honest, Damon, thinking about it on the top, off the top of my head, because it seems like it complements the autism one quite nicely. So